Welcome to This Explainer. Today, we're diving into a massive archaeological mystery, and honestly, it might completely change how you view the origins of human civilization itself. I mean, think about it. Long before humans wrote their first words, before they planted a single seed of wheat, or built the very first mud brick villages, they did something that seems, well, completely irrational. They knelt down, closed their eyes, and prayed to forces they literally could not see, touch, or hear.
So we've got to start with a really profound question. Long before that first seed was planted, why did our ancestors, scattered across this totally wild, dangerous planet, why did they all independently invent the concept of the supernatural? It's not like someone just handed them a holy book, right? Evolutionary archaeologists have tracked traces of this spiritual awakening going back tens of thousands of years. And to find its source, well, we have to look at how our ancestors treated their dead.
Okay, let's look at this contrast for a second, because it's wild. In the animal kingdom, there's basically a total indifference to death. A lion will literally just walk right past a fallen pride mate. But early humans, they started treating corpses as sacred. They began packing graves with resource-heavy goods, weapons, intricate bone jewelry, perfectly crafted stone tools. In a prehistoric world where making just one single hand axe took hours of intense, back-breaking labor, burying it in the dirt is a massive evolutionary anomaly. So why do it? Well, because they actually believed the dead were embarking on a sacred journey to another realm.
Part 1. The Mystery of the Grave.
Now, what's truly staggering here is just how far back this shared cognitive legacy actually goes. Look at the Cima de los Huesos site. 400,000 years ago, someone deliberately left a pristine, red quartzite hand axe, they call it Excalibur, just left it there for the dead. Fast forward to 176,000 years ago, and Neanderthals were building these incredibly complex, deep cave stalagmite rings in pitch blackness, way before modern humans even showed up. And by 90,000 years ago, in Kafse Cave, we're seeing burials covered in red ochre and marine shells. This isn't just a fluke. This behavior spans hundreds of thousands of years.
Part 2. Our Miswiring Brains.
To understand why they sacrifice perfectly good survival tools to the dirt, we have to look at the actual wiring of our ancient brains. The crucial piece of the puzzle here is a cognitive survival tool called the theory of mind. Originally, this mental mechanism evolved to let our ancestors navigate incredibly complex social hierarchies. By guessing what their neighbors were thinking, or feeling, or secretly intending, early humans could avoid danger and build alliances. It was basically an internal radar system, right? Designed to keep you from being eaten on the savannah or cast out of your tribe.
But here's the thing. This amazing survival mechanism accidentally misfired. Early humans started overprojecting this conscious intent onto the natural world around them, which created animism. Suddenly, every shadow, every storm, every slight change in the weather was gauged as an intentional action by a conscious mind. So if it rained, the sky actively wanted to wet the earth. If a volcano erupted, well, the mountain was angry. And here is the huge evolutionary leap. Because they believed these natural forces had conscious minds, they realized, hey, we can negotiate with them. So they started trading sacrifices and rituals for survival.
And this ancient programming, it is so deeply ingrained that it's still with us today. Just look at this. Even in our modern, super scientific era, 84% of the global population still identifies with formal religion. And even more staggeringly, among the unaffiliated, 1 in 5 self-identifying atheists still feels some sort of conscious intent or spiritual energy behind the universe. Think about that for a second. Despite building space stations and particle accelerators, our brains are still literally running that Pleistocene default code.
Part 3. The ultimate social glue. Beyond just explaining the weather, this cognitive glitch actually ended up solving a massive logistical problem for early societies. As tribes grew past, say, 30 hunter-gatherers, face-to-face accountability basically vanished. You no longer knew everyone you were interacting with. It's kind of like being in a massive group project today. A free rider problem emerges. The incentive to cheat, to steal, and to act selfishly just absolutely skyrockets. And honestly, this dynamic destroyed countless human groups throughout history.
So to prevent total social collapse, religion evolved to include moralizing forces. By extending that social surveillance to an all-seeing deity, someone who could ruin crops or bring disease, religion essentially acted as the ultimate psychological police force. If you stole when no human was looking, well, you still couldn't hide from the gods. This gave cooperative tribes a massive evolutionary advantage. It allowed them to scale up, share food safely, and totally outcompete the more selfish groups.
Section 4. The Monument that Rewrote History.
This brings us to literally the biggest archaeological plot twist of the 20th century. Seriously, this changes everything about how we thought civilization formed. For decades, we believed in a very specific, neat timeline. Agriculture created food surpluses, which gave humans the luxury of settling down, and then eventually they created organized religion. But the physical evidence has completely flipped this timeline on its head. The new reality shows that gathering for religion actually forced the birth of agriculture.
We can see this perfectly at the absolutely mind-blowing site of Göbekli Tepe and its sister site Karahan Tepe in Turkey. This place proved that pre-agricultural, nomadic hunter-gatherers were already joining forces 11,500 years ago. Without metal tools, without wheels, without beasts of burden, these nomads built massive, interconnected regional ritual networks. We're talking about perfectly carved 10 to 20-ton T-shaped stone pillars.
But here's the catch. To feed the hundreds of gathered workers constructing these colossal temples over months at a time, just foraging for wild game and berries simply wasn't going to cut it. They had to systematically plant wild einkorn wheat from the nearby mountains just to survive the construction process. This means the human need for ritual literally domesticated our food. Religion was the catalyst that built civilization, not the other way around.
Part 5. The cost of belief.
Because you have to wonder, right? What kept these early believers so fanatically committed to these massive, totally exhausting architectural undertakings? Well, it turns out the evolutionary scaffolding of ritual predates humans entirely. We can actually observe this today with wild chimpanzees in West Africa. They'll repeatedly throw stones at resonant trees, leaving piles of rocks at their bases for absolutely no biological survival reason. This habit of marking specific spaces as sacred or special through repetitive, non-functional actions, that was already in place millions of years ago.
On top of that ancient scaffolding, these rituals triggered a really powerful biological chain reaction, which was huge in a world filled with trauma and disease. Engaging in intense collective chanting and prayer actually deactivated the brain's default mode network. This dramatically lowered stress-inducing cortisol and flooded the body with empathy-building oxytocin and endorphins. It basically dissolved the boundaries of the individual self, making unrelated strangers feel like literal biological siblings. It was a true biological placebo effect.
However, to make sure no one was faking this powerful group bond just to exploit the society, remember those free riders we talked about? Groups relied on what's called costly signaling theory. This principle basically dictates that a behavior is only a reliable signal of commitment if it is difficult, demanding, or downright painful to perform. Meaning these painful or extreme rituals acted as an impenetrable barrier to entry against anyone untrustworthy.
And sadly, this explains some of the really dark, horrifying extremes in our history. Take ancient Carthage, for example. The elites there would actually sacrifice their own children to the god Moloch during military sieges. Under costly signaling theory, giving up a child was the ultimate, absolutely impossible to fake demonstration of loyalty to the collective survival of the state. This shared, unimaginable trauma proved absolute commitment and prevented internal panic when the city was threatened.
Section 6. Our ancient programming today.
Over time, this ancient social technology evolved into concepts like Zoroastrian cosmic dualism, turning the spirit world from local nature negotiations into a massive cosmic war between absolute good and evil. And even though we live in these towering glass cities today, our underlying hardware really hasn't changed. You can see it right now in our modern superstitions. When you knock on wood to prevent bad luck, or wear your lucky sports jersey on game day, or close your eyes to blow out birthday candles, you are functionally performing the exact same low-risk negotiations with the unseen as our ancient ancestors doing rain dances. We are still just trying to buy a little bit of control over an unpredictable future.
So I'll leave you with this final, pretty powerful thought from our explainer today. We didn't need to be taught to believe in the supernatural. It is literally the default setting of the human brain forged through millions of years of survival. The question isn't really whether we've outgrown the ancient temples. The real question is, as we look up at the vastness of the sky today, are we still just wondering if anyone is looking back down?